the US who's listening in to this webinar. Thank you so much for taking your time to be here and listen to this webinar. And um, yeah, I guess without further ado, let's get started. Um, Let me share my presentation and I will go on from here. So yes, today's webinar is going to be a product focus, which is going to be on bakery ingredients in China. And just to provide a little background information on China's bakery industry, um, development of China's bakery industry can be traced all the way back to the beginning of the 20th century. But the real process of industrialization and modernization started after China's reform and opening up policy in 1978. And prior to this, there was no real system for the industry, and most of the industry was just really small pastry factories and homemade workshops with very limited market scale and influence. And it wasn't until the founding of the PRC and the gradual development of the economy that a bakery industry really began to take shape. But due to the low standard of living at the time and also the limited disposable income that people had, the baking industry as a whole developed very slowly. And the type of companies were dominated by state-owned companies and also collective artisanal workshops. And in the 1980s, what is known as the modern bakery industry was first introduced to the mainland from places like Hong Kong and Taiwan. And during this period, the introduction of Western style bakeries and pastries really marked the rise of China's bakery industry, even though product categories were relatively homogenous and market penetration was still pretty low. But as consumer acceptance of new flavors and products slowly increased, the bakery products began to gain popularity in major cities. So that lays the foundation for the industry's subsequent development. In the 90s, consumer demand grew significantly and the type of products began to diversify, covering a wider range of categories from bread to pastries to cookies and cakes. And the industry gradually transformed from the traditional artisanal production to a modernized and standardized production model. And the market scale continued to expand. Now, at the beginning of the 21st century, baking industry in China entered what is called the golden age of development, with the rapid rise of the number of brands that's in the market, as well as the entry of international chains, for example, Starbucks um, or Bread Talk, which is a chain from Singapore. The industry became increasingly competitive, and the degree of brand marketing and standardization increased. Now, at that stage, foreign companies had captured a larger share of the market by virtue of their brand and financial advantages, while local companies slowly gained a greater say in the market through their continuous innovation and improvement. So the retail market size for bakery products in China was around $80 billion US dollars in 2023, growing by 9.2% compared to 2022. And this is expected to increase and reach to $87 billion this year. And so far, the overall revenue of China's bakery product industry has maintained a positive growth rate at 6.8% in the first quarter of 2024. And with the increase in per capita consumption level and the way food consumption has evolved, the bakery industry is seeing a robust and sustained consumer demand. The rapid development of upstream and downstream industries in the sector will also see the market expand further. And it is forecasted that the market for bakery products will reach $122 billion in 2029. This growth not only reflects the increase in consumer demand, but also demonstrates the industry's ability to respond quickly to diverse consumer needs and market changes. As a key market in the Asia Pacific region, China is playing and will be playing a pivotal role in the global bakery industry. So today, the bakery industry in China is more established in first and second tier cities, and it has a larger customer base in general in these areas. Now, if you're not familiar with what are first and second tier cities, long story short, these are the cities with the strongest economies and also living standards. There are currently 4 first-tier cities in China, which are Shanghai in East China, Beijing in the north, and Guangzhou and Shenzhen in south. So each one has over 10 million in population and as many as 20 plus million. So for Shanghai, for example, where I am right now, has a population of over 24 million. And in the sense of the bakery sector, it is the headquarters for over 400 bakery and pastry brands, with over 1,300 bakery stores and over 8,000 coffee shops. But some of the fastest growth is actually happening in second-tier cities. So these are cities that are, in an economic sense, slightly behind these first-tier cities, but they are quickly emerging, and there are actually more and more people moving to these cities for work and life because they're a bit slower and things are a bit cheaper over there. So we're seeing more and more people instead of moving to first-tier cities for work or for opportunities, they're moving to second-tier cities because there's more space there. So a lot of the economic growth and also trends are actually happening in these cities. So these cities are spread across all around the country, but some of the prime markets include, say, Hangzhou in East China, Shenyang or Dalian in the northeast, Chengdu and Chongqing in the southwest, and an entire cluster of cities in southern China that is better known as the Greater Bay Area. So these are some of the prime markets in the second-tier cities. The bakery sector in China is extremely competitive and is known for its dynamic innovation on distribution and products. So consumers are no longer satisfied for bakery shop to offer just bread and pastry. So because of that, many of them have diversified their menus to include coffee, milk, bubble tea, or milk teas. And within that, you're also seeing more and more concoctions of new flavors using novel ingredients, especially in the coffee and tea segment. And on the other hand, more coffee shops are doing the opposite by adding baked goods like bread and pastries. So Starbucks was one of the first to bring that model to China, but it is now almost impossible to find a coffee shop, whether it's a chain or a single store, that doesn't sell some sort of croissant or cheesecake. But overall, though, pastries and sweet pies, so including those with beans, fruits, egg yolk, and other fillings, constitute the largest segment of bakery products and are in growing demand. Because of the competitiveness of the market, companies have to keep innovating and developing new recipes to grab attention of not just your average consumer, but opinion leaders or influencers who can really sway purchasing decisions. But then I guess in China, but not just in China, but everywhere as well. But once something becomes a hit, you're going to see everyone copying this and selling the same thing within the same week. So the best example would be what is called dirty bread, which you can see in this picture right there, which is a croissant covered in cocoa powder and filled with chocolate sauce. So this thing became an overnight sensation around 2017, and it was all over social media when it came out. And even though it's no longer quite the sensation it is, there are still many bakeries today that sell some sort of iteration of the same thing with different flavors and ingredients. Now, as far as production, the production process of bakery products in China can be divided into two main categories. So we can basically say they're divided into fresh made and prepackaged. So fresh made refers to products that are where the entire production process from raw ingredients to finished products is done inside a bakery shop or at a nearby workshop. It often relies on specialized equipment on site. The advantage of this model is the ability to provide fresh products that appeal to the ready-to-eat demand of the Chinese consumers. And on the other hand, prepackaged products are mass-produced in centralized factories and distributed through the logistics to various sales terminals. For example, supermarkets, convenience stores. So the advantage of this model is that it can achieve standardized production, improve production efficiency, and expand the market coverage of the products. So in 2022, 70% of China's bakery goods were fresh made, and only about 28% being prepackaged. And in comparison, in Japan, 79% were prepackaged, and only 21% were fresh made. So obviously, prepackaged products have the advantages of having a longer shelf life, more convenient storage and transportation, and easy inventory turnover. Now, since the Chinese diet has always emphasized on freshness, fresh products are, for the time being, is going to be the way to go. But as people become busier with work and life, the potential for prepackaged products still have a lot of room for growth. As far as the types of bakery products in China, China produces a variety of products, with breads, cakes, and cookies being some of the most common. And in a broad stroke, these products can be separated into Chinese and Western styles bakeries. So for Chinese bakeries, they can be further categorized into traditional and modern Chinese bakery. By traditional, we're talking about some of the prime examples being mooncakes, egg custards, sesame balls, pineapple bun, uh, fried dough, and noodle cakes, for example. And each region in China have their own unique flavors and ingredients when it comes to traditional Chinese bakeries. And modern Chinese bakery, that includes really breads and pastries that fused both East and West sort of ingredients and flavors, but usually with a unique twist to it. So, for example, hot dog buns or curry buns, uh, pizzas. Not exactly the type of pizza that we eat, but smaller sized. But yeah, on the other hand, most Western bakeries we see in China are the European type, European style breads and pastries. So, for example, baguettes, Danish, uh, bread loaves, pretzels, cheesecakes, tiramisus, etc. And there were also some Japanese and Korean bakery chains that entered the Chinese market around the 2000s that became very popular, but before fading out in the past few years. But um, they inspired many of the types of products that Chinese bakery chains are producing today, most likely because of the similar palate that people from these countries have or and they share. So the sales channel in China's bakery industry can be basically divided into online and offline. So offline channels are further divided into what we call the specialized channels and other channels. So bakeries, including chain bakeries and single store or mom and pop stores. These stores mainly sell fresh made, short shelf life products, and the majority of their products are made from scratch using ingredients purchased from different suppliers and sold at their own branded stores. So other offline channels are divided into convenience stores, supermarkets, and hypermarkets. These stores mainly sell prepackaged products that are made by other producers, either domestically or imported. These products have much longer shelf life, but many supermarkets in China also have their own in-house bakeries or centralized kitchens that produce and deliver their own breads and pastries to each store. And so analysts in China believe that convenience store and the online channel are closer to meeting the purchasing habits of younger consumers today. So they're expecting the sales share of these in these channels will be trending upwards in the future. And from 2014 to 2023, more than half of China's revenue in the bakery industry came from specialty food stores. But that ratio is declining from nearly 60%. So that is the orange part at the bottom that you see in the chart on the right. It went from nearly 60% in 2014, barely over 50% in 2023. And the same trend is happening with hypermarkets and supermarkets, where their sales has been squeezed in more recent years. On the other hand, sales at convenience stores, where it's bracketed in red over here, you can see, um, are growing gradually, but because of their limited store size, it is expected that the room for growth will be relatively limited as well. Meanwhile, with the explosive growth of the e-commerce industry in China, especially during and after COVID, Many bakery chains, including boutique chains, are seeing significant growth using online platforms to sell to consumers. So these companies utilize the inexpensive and improved logistics infrastructure to get their bakery products direct to consumers within either days or even within an hour if you're ordering from your neighborhood bakery store or restaurants. So China's bakery industry has a well-developed industrial chain with the main players in the chain exchanging demand and feedback with each other to complete the value cycle. So raw materials such as flour, oil and fat, cream, and sauces are at the upstream of the bakery chain. And in the middle of the chain are bakeries and centralized factories, which delivers semi-finished and finished bakery products to the downstream sales. And the downstream end of the chain directly faces the consumers, who will directly generate demand and feed it back to the middle and upper chain. So all of these are interconnected. So the quality and cost from the ingredients coming from the upstream will have a direct impact on the quality and pricing of the finished products for the middle and the midstream and downstream companies. Now, compared with the United States, Japan, the UK, Korea, and other places, regions, for example, Hong Kong, the total consumption of baked goods in mainland China is second only to the US. But per capita consumption, it is only slightly higher than Korea and less than 30% of the UK, the US, and Japan. So one of the biggest reasons is because China's modern bakery industry, as we mentioned earlier, it started pretty late compared to the other countries, and also because of the traditional diet that is mostly rice and noodle based. So these are the staple foods that are in China. So baked products are not necessarily part of the encompassing diet that the Chinese people have. So in comparison, um, in Europe, where breads and pastry are relatively more of a staple product, staple food, consumption per capita is much higher and it doesn't really need time for any adaptation like China does. Still, with development of the modern industry in China and the impetus of consumption upgrading, the per capita consumption in China is expected to continue to rise over the upcoming years. Now, when we look at the type of consumers who buy bakery products in China, female consumers are the main purchasers, accounting for around 57%. And by income, the middle and high income group are the primary consumers, with around 56% of the consumers who buy bakery products earning around 5,000 to 15,000 RMB per month. So that comes to around 715 to 2,100 per month. And with the improvement of living standards and a greater emphasis on pursuing health, consumer demand for bakery product is now more diversified, and healthy and interesting products are becoming more popular. This is largely reflected in the way brands are selecting their raw materials, which tend to be more natural and healthy, uh, emphasizing on low fat and low sugar, gluten-free, even organic. And the proportion of consumers in China who buy bakery products at least once a week is just a tick over 90%. And 26% of them buy bakery products 4 to 6 times a week. Only 2% of them buy every single day, and nearly 10% buy them less than once in a week. And in terms of price, the proportion of consumers spending 21 to 40 RMB, or around 3 to 5 US dollars per purchase, is the highest at 40%, followed by around 23% who spent 41 to 60 RMB, or around $6 to $8 per purchase. An extremely low number of consumers will spend on the extreme ends of the price spectrum. But in first-tier cities, it's not exactly uncommon to see people eating at a fancy bakery that sell pastries at over 100 RMB, or around $14 to $15. So based on these findings, it is believed that consumers in China have already formed a habit of purchasing bakery goods. And in terms of price, there are definitely consumers who are willing to pay premium prices for high quality products. Now, the top 3 factors consumers in China focus on when buying bakery products are taste, freshness, and nutrition. So that accounts for 44%, 43%, and 39% respectively. And you have other factors as well. So we can take a look at this. So quality ingredients at 36%, that's important. Convenience as far as consuming the product itself is at around 35%. Price, 33%. Convenience as far as purchasing the product is at around 32%. The brand that they're purchasing is around 27%. The packaging design at around 24%. And the appearance of the product itself is probably the lowest at around, 23%. So it is believed that with the way the pace is with today's work life, quality taste and healthy ingredients are going to be the key factors in attracting and also retaining customers. So bakery companies are balancing taste and health by launching more healthy products with low sugar, low fat, and high fiber to cater to their demands. And according to a survey, 58% of Chinese consumers buy or consume bakery products for snacking, followed by 47% who eat them because they're hungry. Around 41% said they consume bakery for special occasions, for example, birthdays, anniversaries, celebrations, etc. With the same percentage of people who consume them as meal replacement. Around 29% buy bakeries as gifts, and actually that number is growing, and it's gradually becoming one of the more important scenarios for consumption in China. So some of the key bakery ingredients used in China include flour, yeast, sugar, fat, dairy, eggs, etc., which serve as the foundation or the base of most bakery products. These ingredients account for more than 80% of all ingredients for bakery products and pretty much determines the basic structure and flavor of the product. Meanwhile, primary imported ingredients for bakery products include wheat, dried fruits, and even frozen fruit. We'll get into that later. Tree nuts, dairy, and also preservatives. So from 2018 to 2023, China's bakery flour consumption showed an overall upward trend, which was 6 million tons in 2023, and it is expected to reach around 8 million tons by 2028. So while flour is not a major export product from the US to China, uh, so as you can see, the import number and the value has been relatively low, especially since COVID. But it is believed that as an important part of the bakery industry chain, flour will see consumption growth that grows along with the bakery product market in the future. As for dairy, dairy consumption in China has been growing over the years as the dietary pattern changes and the way that government encourages people to consume dairy as part of a healthy diet is why demand for dairy ingredients is expected to continue to grow in the upcoming years. So there are several key players in China's dairy industry that produce everything from milk, cheese, yogurt, butter, cream, etc. But local production still has problems meeting the demand or the quality for high quality ingredients that are needed for in-demand consumer products. And within the bakery sector, butter and cheese are two of the most in-demand dairy ingredients. When it comes to suppliers, New Zealand very much has a stranglehold in China's market. And countries like Australia, Germany, France, and also Japan are also some of the other players in the market as well. The US, in comparison, has a small share of the market, but exports have been growing year by year since 2019, which was boosted primarily by the demand for milk powder and whey powder. So butter, as part of the dairy ingredient, is mainly used in bakery products, but also for yogurt, ice cream, and also in food service applications in China. So, for example, pasta and pizza. So even though butter is more expensive, high-end food processors, especially the higher-end bakeries, continue to use butter instead of plant-based or artificial products to promote the concept of a healthy diet. And when it comes to butter, processors in China prefer using imports, mostly from New Zealand, but also from France as well. So China produces around 110,000 metric tons of butter, but is limited by seasonality and also cost, which is why they continue to rely on imports. And China imports around 140,000 metric tons of butter in 2023, with New Zealand accounting for almost 90% of the market share. The US exported around 250 tons in the same year. Very low in comparison, but export value is up 55% as of the first 8 months of this year. So for the US, as with other of their products, price is the biggest barrier. But another one, and it's an interesting one, is how the butter looks. So in Chinese, butter is literally called yellow fat, yellow oil, yellow fat, same thing. So naturally, the Chinese prefer yellow butter, but most butters from the US that are in the market are white or lighter in color. So it generates less interest from buyers and consumers. And meanwhile, the home baking industry, home baking trend that boomed during COVID has kept up. It's still popular around many cities. So that opens up a new sales channel for butter. And a young female demographic, age 26 to 40, who makes up nearly the entire home baking population, is going to remain as the biggest driver for butter consumption in this segment. In terms of cheese, consumption is growing in two opposite directions. So on the retail front, sales are declining, while growth is mainly coming from the food service sector, with the bakery sector playing a major part of it. Only a limited amount of raw milk in China are used for cheese production, and within that, only about 20% of cheese produced in China is natural cheese. The rest is processed cheese using imported natural cheese as an ingredient. So the demand for imported cheese is here to stay until any major changes happen in the domestic dairy industry. However, since imported cheese is considered high-end product in China, and that the market is largely influenced by the economy, the overall imports of cheese in China saw a dip at the beginning of 2024. So just like butter, New Zealand remains the biggest exporter of cheese to China with a 64% share. And even though the US only accounts for around 7% of the market, it exported over 70 million of cheese in 2023, which was the most it has ever exported to China. And for tree nuts, so despite the overall weak consumption across China, nut consumption is expected to see moderate growth in the foreseeable future. And this is driven by changing dietary concepts. So consumer behaviors have changed to become more concerned about nutrition and functions. So foods like tree nuts are attracting more attention from both consumers and also in the baking industry, where nuts are used in different types of pastries, cakes, cookies, and breads. For the most part of the decade, China relied on imports for its tree nut supply, and it will probably remain so for some time as demand is driven by development of the food processing industry and also difficulty in growing some of the popular foreign varieties, for example, pecans, within the Chinese market. Now, being one of the top tree nuts importers in the world, China imports of both in-shell and shelled nuts reached 5-year highs in 2023. And the US, as a major producer of tree nuts, especially pistachios, almonds, and pecans, naturally ranked as one of the most important suppliers in China. However, Chinese buyers have become more price sensitive in the wake of the economy headwinds, and businesses are cutting costs to maintain price competitiveness, which resulted in people becoming more selective when it comes to spending. As a result of that, importers are more cautious about prices when sourcing nuts from the global market. And if you break down the different types of tree nuts that are most popular in the bakery industry, US was the largest pistachio supplier to China, holding more than 80% of market share in 2023. And imports in 2023 were up 62% from 2022. And for the first 8 months of this year, imports are up a further 121%. And China's imports of pistachios from Iran, the second largest supplier, may continue to improve, and it is also expected to import more pistachios from Turkey, who is the world's largest second producer, but has not been a major player in China. For almonds, China remains the third largest importer of almonds after the EU and India in 2023. And imports in 2023/2024 dropped by 27%, largely because of the low yields in both California and also Australia. The US remains China's largest supplier of almonds, but Australia is taking advantage of their free trade agreement with China. So they are quickly catching up. And on the other hand, China is also starting to import almonds from Spain, but it's still in very limited volume. Pecans is one of the emerging products within the tree nut categories that is gaining awareness and demand in China in recent years. And imports from the US have increased each year from 2019 to 2023. And so far, imports are poised to overtake last year's 93 million in value. And for walnut, imports have been declining since 2012 when domestic production started to take off. But importers are still importing small volumes of in-shell walnuts from Chile and also the US to satisfy niche domestic markets. And last but not least, dried fruits, and also in some degrees, frozen fruits as well, especially those that are known to consumers as superfoods that are high in nutrients, such as antioxidants, for example, blueberries or cranberries. So these are in demand in the retail and also food service sector, including the bakery sector. So compared to other countries, the US is probably most well known in China for its dry fruits, from cranberries, blueberries, prunes, figs, cherries, raisins. Chinese consumers are more likely to think of the US when it comes to these type of products. And they are known for their high nutritional values and also for their quality. So over the years, a large proportion of processed fruits, so both dried and frozen, exported to China were made up of cranberries. But prunes and raisins have both maintained pretty solid export numbers, with dried cherries and blueberries still looking to increase their share in the market. Now, in terms of potential, new processed and value-added products, for example, sliced, diced, minced nuts, or sugared, pureed, and marinated fruits, could be used to meet different manufacturing requirements or demands. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, a lot of the bakeries in China are now offering beverages like bubble tea and milk teas, and more coffee shops and beverage shops are offering baked products and pastries. So there's additional demand for processed fruits to be used in beverages as well. So that opens up further opportunities. So looking at some of the key takeaways, consumption upgrading will continue to drive growth of the baked goods industry. And with the expansion of China's middle class and rising consumption power, consumers are expected to increase their demand for high quality, healthy, and innovative products. Healthy baked products such as low sugar, gluten-free, and organic ingredients are expected to become key trends. And in terms of product attributes, bakery products are showing the trend of health and also fun. Now, with the enhanced pursuit of health and also consumption upgrading, people are raising the health standards of bakery products and paying more and more attention to ingredients. So healthy, low fat, but also fun or interesting bakery products are more popular among consumers. And in response to this new trend, bakery brands are competing to launch products that are made with healthy ingredients to meet consumer demand. And lastly, home baking will be a new window of opportunity for bakery ingredient sales in the retail market. But growth in the retail market is still fairly flat so far this year. So the outlook will depend largely on how well the economy recovers in 2025. And here are a couple of trade shows in China next year that may help you connect with buyers and users of bakery ingredients in China to develop your businesses. So Food Ingredients China, for example, focus on general food ingredients, and that is in March in Shanghai, while the China Bakery Exhibition in Guangzhou and also Bakery China in Shanghai are attended by professionals and players in the bakery industry. And also you have Hofex Hong Kong, CL China, and also Food and Hotel China. Those cover more general food and drink products with a good mix of retail and also food service buyers. And as you can see, USADA will be joining Hofex and CL China next year. So hopefully we see you there next year. So that is pretty much the presentation for us today. Thank you very much for listening in. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to take them.
You can ask your questions whether by using the hand function or coming on off mute. You're also more than welcome to use the chat function for questions as well. Might get off easy, Ian.
Yeah, they're letting me off easy. But yeah, if there's any questions from, in the future, we're happy to take them through email or any other channels.
Perfect. All righty. Well, if we don't have any questions here, I think we'll probably call that an afternoon or a morning for Ian.
Yeah.
Again, if anyone was interested in the China Decree webinar, that link is now working. You can go to our website or through your MyWusada account to sign up for that webinar. We also have a few more webinars on deck that you'll receive an email for. On Thursday, October 24th, that is going to be North Africa, opportunities for U.S. exporters in free trade Morocco. Tuesday, October 29th, we have the China Decree 248. And then Thursday, November 7th, we're going to have opportunities in India, the overall India market. So again, more additional information to come following those webinars and those markets. But I think we'll call that an afternoon. So again, thank you for everyone for attending. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to myself, your engagement executive here at WUSADA, or Ian for any questions. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Ian from Scott and Friends sign off. Thank you.
Thank you.